my experience with the Veterans Administration disability claim process and the issues that I had. But before we do that, I'd like to get into a couple other things. We're going to talk about my career and family, because this does have a tie-in to the actual VA compensation process. We're going to talk about what you should do and why you should do it. And that's going to encompass three things. It's going to encompass how to prepare mentally and document physically. We're going to talk about the sick bay commando, and then we're going to talk about the possibilities when it comes to disabilities and separating from the military. This is all branches of service, regardless of branch of service. There might be different procedures to go through in each branch of the military, but the actual possibilities are all the same, regardless of branch of service. And then lastly, I'm going to discuss my personal VA claim experience and actually two other friends of mine that had VA claims and how I helped them, one successfully and one is in the process right now of submitting a VA disability compensation claim. Okay, so let's get into it. My background, my career, and family. I spent a little over 30 years in the Marine Corps. Every one of those stripes you see, I earned. I was never given anything. I had no so-called fast track as a first sergeant and sergeant major route at a young age. I had a lot of challenges in the Marine Corps. A lot of them were dealt with racism, and these are the facts. And somebody said I should write a book. But for now, we're going to stick to the subject of the Veterans Administration disability compensation issues. And so my career. As an administrator in the Marine Corps, I dealt with a lot of admin separations, non-judicial punishments, courts martial, letters of caution, all kinds of things that deal with entry, punishment, and exit out of the military. And so when it came to doing a Veterans Administration disability claim, you don't really get any counseling about how to do that while you're on active duty. Typically it happens, at least it happened for me, and I would gather it happens for everyone this way too, when you do a retirement seminar. When you go through a retirement seminar is when they introduce you to this post-military VA disability compensation. And I would say that that is a major, major, major problem, because you are ill prepared for what is about to happen. What happened to me is at the retirement seminar, they had people come out from the VA. They go through, they ask you to bring your medical record, and they flip through your medical record. You give them your medical record. They flip through it. They write notes down, and then they tell you a summary after they've gone through your entire medical record. At that time, I had 2 medical files. So they went through all of that, and they gave me a summary of what they saw in my medical record, because everything boils down to what you can show in your medical record, not what you say when you retire 15 years, 20 years, or between 20 years and 30 years. They go by what is proof. The proof is in your medical record. Okay, so my family. I had a family at the time that I retired, a family of 5, a wife and 3 children. My son has autism. It's a point of mentioning because you get VA compensation if you have a child with disability. You get VA compensation if you're married. You get VA compensation if you have children, by the number of children. So all of the things come into play when you retire and you are getting VA disability compensation. And there's a lot of paperwork associated with it, and there's different forms you have to fill out for different things. There's one you fill out for family members. There's one you fill out for the VA disability compensation itself. And all of these things make up your veterans disability compensation pay. All right, so that concludes much information I want to share on career and family. So let's go ahead and let's get into what you should do and why. And I mentioned this a little earlier. What you should do and why. What you have to do is you must understand that there's going to be a point in time that you're going to get out of the Marine Corps, whether it is a admin sep, let me say it so that everybody can understand it, admin separation, whether it be a medical separation because you got injured while you're on active duty, whether it be a court martial and a punitive discharge, or whether you retire at 15 years or later. You must understand some things that you have to be prepared to do and how you must think. So we're going to get to the next subject. Okay, we're going to get into the next subject, which is you must prepare mentally and document physically. What you're doing right now, if you're listening to this video, is you are preparing mentally because a lot of this information you're not going to get while you're serving. And a lot, like I said, it's going to come at the time you separate, and then that's going to be a major problem because a lot of the things that you might receive compensation for might not be in your health record if you don't follow what I'm about to tell you. Okay, so you are mentally preparing because you're listening to this, and we're going to talk about documenting physically because what's in your mind is not going to work with VA compensation for a disability claim. What is in your physical documents is what is going to matter. So let's get into it. Back in, I don't know if they still say this in the Marine Corps today. I retired in 2012 after a little over 30 years in the Marine Corps. And they used to harp on Marines not being sick bay commandos. Okay, they hated when you went to sick bay. They hated that. And so I'm going to tell you that you need to go to medical anytime you have an ache, a pain, or an injury and have it documented in your medical record. Now, if the people that come out and pre-screen your record miss something, that is if they go over it and they show you what they've seen in your medical record, you can go in and say, hey, on this particular date, this particular time frame, I had this particular injury. That way they can go back because they might have overlooked it. They're not perfect, they're human. So you don't want to be a sick bay commando, but what you want to do is make sure you go to medical and you document every ache, pain, injury, because what happens is, and if you don't know this over time, you can have some things escalate into a worse and worse problem. You might have twisted an ankle. Next thing you know, you've got a tear in the Achilles tendon that requires a surgery. And see, so there's a build up to that. So you want to have all of that information in your medical record. Back pains, shoulder pains, joint pains, neck pains, pains in your eye, your ears, your nose. Of course, dental is a big one, to be honest with you, in military, post-military. So all of these things you want to make sure you document because they are rateable things for disability after you get out of the military. All right, so again, document every single ache, pain, and injury in your medical record. Another thing that you do typically when you are about to get out of the military, they'll ask you to make 2 copies of your medical record. So one for yourself, and one you're gonna submit your original records for review to the VA, and or you submit a copy of everything. So, and where you're gonna do that? Where you're gonna make all these copies, and like I said, I had 2 medical records, so that was a lot of copying, and then some of these things are front and back. So you're gonna be at a copy machine all day. This is another thing that happens too, is people that are active duty who are not having to go through this process are going to look at you or might look at you and say, hey, well, you can spend a lot of time doing that. Well, this is what you have to do when it's time to exit the military. All right, so let's go on to possibilities. Let's talk about possibilities. The possibilities are if you get injured, and I saw this specifically in 1st Marine Division, that if a Marine was injured, especially in the infantry, they wanted that Marine transferred out of that unit as quick as they could get him out because they want a new body. They want the broken body out. They want a fresh body in so they can carry on with their mission, their deployment, so on and so forth. I don't know if it's playing out the same way today. This is what happened the last about 4 years before I retired. I was in the 1st Marine Division. And so this is the things that I had to deal with. Some of these things came up to my level with the Marines that were in my particular occupational specialty. But I knew of all of these things happening within the 1st Marine Division, regardless of MOS. If you have a broken Marine, a lot of times the unit wants to get the Marine out. And in case of the infantry, what they would do is they would ask for the Marine to be transferred to the Wounded Warrior Battalion. Don't know if it's still playing out the same way, but this is the experience I had. I'm going to tell it, and this is the 100% truth. And so in doing that, in actuality, a lot of the Marines that were transferred to the Wounded Warrior Battalion should not have been transferred there, but because of the networking amongst that particular E9 community, they are able to get people out of their unit and over to Wounded Warrior Battalion. So that's one option. You might get transferred out of your unit. The next one is you might go through a process for a medical separation, and there's a multitude of medical separations to include a medical retirement, right? And they do both include going through a VA disability compensation process. Or and the reason why I put the or in here for regular retirement, whether you're going to receive final pay, high 36, redo or redux, however you want to pronounce it, and the blended retirement system, BRS, is based on, all those are based upon your entry year into active service as to which particular retirement plan you fall into. That's a whole nother issue. But the point being is you might want to take, instead of a medical retirement, if you're retirement eligible at 15 years or greater, it might be better to take your so-called regular retirement. I don't think anybody would advise you not to do that, but just in case, you should take your regular retirement and still apply for VA disability compensation. That's what you should do. That should suffice that. Now, I'm going to jump into my VA disability claim experience. Now, another biggie is if you have sleep apnea. Now, you might not know you have sleep apnea, but if a roommate, if you live in the barracks, or if your spouse is, if you're married and you live in quarters, off base or whatever, tells you that it sounds like you stop breathing when you sleep, that is sleep apnea, and it can be very dangerous. Sleep apnea is can be caused by a number of things, and in the military, especially the Marine Corps, there's a lot of stress, and so these are things that can manifest in your body, and sleep apnea can be one of those issues. And yes, it comes with snoring, loud snoring. Sounds like you stop breathing in your sleep, and you want to go to medical, have a sleep study, and see if you have sleep apnea and have that documented in your medical record. But these are things that during my time would come up near the end of a member's career. And as it did mine, it came up during the end of my career as well. My wife happened to tell me, hey, you sound like you stop breathing when you sleep. What the VA did is they had me do a home study, sleep study, where I got the gear, the test gear, I brought it home overnight and took the equipment back, and they did an evaluation on the readings. Well, it turns out that particular type of test is not acceptable for submitting a VA claim for disability for sleep apnea. I found that out when I actually did a in-house VA hospital sleep study. If someone tells you that unless they can prove to you in writing that the VA accepts a home sleep study, don't take the home sleep study. Ask to have a study done at the VA hospital itself, and then it's actually within the system itself. Okay, so I did receive a little bit of compensation based upon some things about 12 months or 13 months after I retired. Now, in the midst of this, you got to understand, you're going through, if you don't get out after 30 years, or if you don't have enough money in your TSP, what's going to happen is you're going to be looking for a job. And so on top of looking for a job, you're worried about this VA disability compensation. You're worried about your retirement pay, and or if you're not retirement eligible, what type of money you're going to receive based upon a VA disability claim. And these things take some time to get processed. Now, during the time I retired, they say it was a huge backlog. They say that today. All right, they say that today. Matter of fact, I saw a news article where they were saying they're trying to privatize the VA claim process. They want to use outside people to do this. When they privatize, that becomes a problem too, because privatization comes with its own issues. When you get out of the military, this goes along with this whole VA disability compensation process too, is when you get out of the military, you're going to have to register with a VA hospital of your choice in your area. Now, what has happened over the years up where I live in the Inland Empire of California, the Loma Linda VA, this is inside information from someone that works there that told me, because all of a sudden my account, my login account for medical disappeared. I cannot log in anymore. And so I had to go down and go through like the registration process again. And I was told that, well, what happened is the VA lost a contract with doctors from the local hospital, and all of the patients that those doctors had would no longer be seen at that particular VA hospital because they didn't have the number of doctors left on hand to support putting all of those patients with the doctors that remained there. You end up with a process where you have to get an authorization. You still go to the VA. You get an authorization if the appointment is going to take too long or they don't offer the service. Then they'll give you the permission to go to a private doctor of your choosing, or you can let them pick. If I were you, I would get the same doctor that I have for post-military healthcare for your insurance. Whatever it is you have, I try to get that. Because sometimes you can run into getting a referral to a private doctor that you're not gonna like, and you're not gonna like until you go there and find out there's a problem. So I've had that happen once. I've had appointments for other things like glasses made, optometry. These are the type of issues you're gonna have when you're trying to navigate the Veterans Administration hospital and the disability claim process. All right, so now I said that I got a low percentage about 12 months to 13 months after I retired. So we're talking about 2013. And I kept wondering what was going on. It's 2018, 6 years later, I received a increase in my rating for my VA disability claim. And for the life of me, I could not understand why it took 6 years to do that. It didn't make any sense to me. You know, I exercised all the patience in the world with the excuses of there's a backlog that was out there in the news. There's a backlog, and you know, there are people that I knew had already gotten their claims approved. They were getting their compensation. So when that happens, when you do get a disability claim that takes that long, what's going to happen is you're going to receive money from the initial application. So I applied in 2012. So I was compensated for those years. That might sound all well and fine, but the issues are if you aren't financially prepared after you retire from the military, then you might end up dipping into savings. You might be dipping into that TSP, which, by the way, you do have to roll over to another type of account when you get out of the military. You can't keep it in TSP forever. Once you're out of the military, you have to transfer it to another type of account. So you're under this stress, this mental stress of how you're going to be able to make ends meet. You know, Marines get houses and things sometimes before they retire, and you know, your pay goes down when you retire. All right, your pay goes down because you're not getting basic allowance for housing. You're not getting pro-rats. You're not getting all that money to support a household that you're getting with your active duty. So you're only going to get a portion of your base pay. And funny story, I had a Marine when I was overseas, 97 to 2000, and this Marine thought that he was going to get basic allowance for housing for each child. And that's not how it works. You get it for having a child and you claim the child for that purpose, or you're married and then everything comes after that, you get no more money. So it's just funny how people think that you get certain things based upon some bad information. And so kind of the same thing happens with this VA disability compensation process. Now I'll tell you the story about how I helped a friend of mine, high school friend of mine. He was in the Army, and he went to Afghanistan, and he ended up getting cancer from depleted uranium. He was a truck driver, and so he was exposed to this depleted uranium, and he got cancer. And he was in the reserve unit. He was in the Army National Guard, and he was having problems. He was ill, obviously. Now here it is, he's ill, he's in the hospital, he's having cancer surgery, cancer treatment, and he's under duress because he ended up losing his job. He worked, I won't get into all of that. He ended up losing his job, and he had some other issues in his life. But understand, when your health is bad and you're going through surgery, chemo, whatever the case may be, and then you have to submit a claim, and you don't know how to do that, it becomes a problem, especially under that condition, because it wasn't a situation where he was counseled doing a seminar or anything. In the midst of that, his reserve unit disbanded. They got rid of all of medical records and any other records they had. He had no access to any of those records. So what I recommended to him was, he did have documentation of the fact that he had cancer, that he could connect to the fact that he was a truck driver driving around depleted uranium in Afghanistan. And so I recommended that I walked him through the process of how to do a VA claim online. And then I told him to contact his elected official for the area that he was in. Because when a congressperson does an inquiry to any government agency, even the military, there is a required response within a certain amount of time. And in the active duty, we call it a congressional inquiry. Well, with the VA, kind of the same things happen. Now, I gave him this advice because I went through 6 years of not having anything happen on my claim until it was finished. And I didn't want him to go through the same process. So I said, hey, maybe you want to use elected official to cause them to question it, and then they'll move your claim along. And it turns out that's exactly what happened. And I will not disclose you how much money he got, but he got a significant amount of money. And, that gave him the ability to buy a home. That gave him the ability to, take care of himself, and to feel better about everything that was happening that he had been through during that tumultuous time. Now, the second story is, I have another friend of mine who went to boot camp, and one of the recruits killed himself in front of this Marine. And there were some issues, and he ended up getting separated during boot camp. But you gotta understand, people who spend a certain amount of time on active duty, I believe it's 15 days, they can get some VA benefits. Okay, and so in this case, he had been trying to put in claims. He has PTSD. He's trying to put in claims with a local VA. I don't know whether it's a hospital, clinic, center. I don't know what it is. It's in another state, not in the state I'm in. They sent him some information to ask him to submit further information, and he never got that information. So what the VA did is they kept closing cases. I believe that might have been like 3 times. So we talked about 2007 or 2009. So we talked this a long time ago. So he never got the communication from the VA saying, that they needed more information. So there's multiple claims, multiple closures. Now, you got to understand the VA is not going to let a claim stay open for very long because there's pressure on them to close claims. Another presentation I want to show you where there is a what they call a scheduler, VA scheduler, who schedules you for appointments, and how they manipulated the system internally. He ended up quitting the job. The man is in tears about the fact that he ended up hurting some veterans because of the internal supervisory policies that were given to VA schedulers. But back to what I was saying. So you have it. He has a current claim in now, and I walked through the process. I told him be very verbatim about your statements. So this is another thing. You need to be, when you're making a claim and they want a statement from you, you need to be as detailed. You need to be, if you can name names, places, time, meaning a date and of time. If you can remember the exact time it happened, not exact time, but around about time, put it in your statement. Make sure your statement is very thorough. Have somebody read it. Now they do have these people that charge money to help you do a claim. Please do not do that. Now I don't know how they do it. I'm not even concerned about how they do it because I would never advise anybody to do it because I didn't do it myself. I did my own work. I read what I needed to read, the manuals or whatever I needed to read, and I put in my claim. Because I went to the mobile VA clinics. I drove down to San Diego because I had a DAV representative down there, Disabled American Veterans representative down there that's supposed to help with this claim. I drove down there twice. That's 200 miles of driving a day. Right? San Diego's 100 miles away from where I'm at. And so what they did is they would kind of get the information about your claim, like if it's near settlement, tell you what the proposal is, and they're going to tell you in that letter, if it's from the DV, that this is not the official document, right? Well, you're going to get the same thing from the VA. If you submit your claim online, you get the same thing from the VA. So to use the DAV, you can if you want to, you can, but they're not the official thing anyway. So, if you did it yourself, if you absolutely just don't want to deal with paperwork and want some help, use the DAV. But if you want control of your issues and want to know 100% of what's happening, when it's happening, how it happens, you want to do it yourself online. And there's plenty of videos out here, people talking about the claim process, maybe know how to input it, but it's not that tough. You just put in what they're asking for. When they ask for a statement, like I said, be very, very thorough with as many details as you possibly can to support what you're talking about. To summarize, now there's VA compensation, there's VA disability compensation, and then there's VA compensation. You get compensation for family members, wife and or children, and then there's another one for children with disabilities. And then there is your disability claim itself for your medical issues, the things that happened to you while you were in the military. There are multiple forms, but they aren't very, very difficult to fill out at all. They're very, very, and actually they all come with instructions online. You can find instructions to them, especially to the things that you do online. You won't know you're filling out a form online, but if you look at the form, it's going to be the same information. So you can download the form, have it in a browser, look at it while you're doing it, and you can figure it out. It's not that difficult. But there's multiple stages to the thing. So the compensation that I received was for my family members. I didn't get my disability things. I said percentage earlier. It was not percentage earlier. It actually was, I got my information for my money for my family. And at the time I had a wife and 3 children, and one of them had a disability. So there was an increase in compensation, VA compensation. So 6 years later, I got the actual disability claim settled. So I got my dependent information settled first after about 12 months to 13 months. And then 6 years, and then 5 years after that, about 5 years after that is when I got my actual VA disability claim compensation. So there's 2 types of compensation, to be clear. Okay. And hopefully this will help someone. And if you do have any questions, you can leave it in the comments. You can contact me at the email that's listed on the account, hakba mastergunnersergeant@gmail.com. And I hope that your process for VA compensation and disability is a lot smoother than it was for me and for a lot of veterans. But we are going to further discuss the issues that have happened to black veterans. Like I said, you may be a dark green Marine until you EAS or retire, but once you get out, you're going to be a black veteran. And there are some things that come along with that. We're going to dive into that, and we're going to talk about what we can do. There are organizations out here that are helping. I hate to use the word. I'm not black. I'm not a color, but for the sake of going over this information, because this is how they present it, there are organizations out here that are helping black veterans, so-called black veterans, to navigate the VA process. And you have to be aware and prepared, right? Prepare mentally and document physically. You got to be willing to do that now. Do not worry about people telling you that you're a sick bay commander, you spend too much time going to medical. Hey, go to medical. Because what's going to happen is those people are not going to receive the proper compensation when they retire, or they have to separate medically. You will, because you'll be going down and documenting everything in your medical record. You can't lump a whole bunch of things. You can lump a whole bunch of things in your medical record at the end. You can try to go have all this stuff hurts now, 6 months, a month before you retire or get out. But that's not the smart way to do it. Smart way to do it is to cover the issue when you have it, and to get the medical attention you might need. It might help so that your situation does not get worse. So hopefully this has been beneficial to the listeners. And it's my honor to do it. And I will continue to present these issues so that we can talk about it and get enlightenment. And please spread the word that you have a retired Master Gunner Sergeant that is going to tell you the truth 100%. No chaser, no sugar, none of that. So until the next one.